So please state your name and date of birth.
Hi, my name is Linda Lux, and I was born March 31st, 1943. I lived at 30 Wavecrest for 43 years. When I first moved to Venice in 1970, I was pregnant with my son, who's now 50, my baby, and moved to the peninsula. Moved here with my first husband to try it, just because we had friends here. We started coming in the late 60s. It was so cool. We rented a house on the peninsula on the Oceanfront Walk and Hurricane to try it. I never went back. Yeah, I remember the first time coming over here as an adult, not when my grandma brought me, because I don't remember that, but I remember going, I felt at home, because I'm from Pacoima, and it was a very working class, mixed race community, lower economic income, and it just felt like I was home, but I had the beach. It was unbelievable. So I felt very comfortable from the first time I saw it, and I just felt I was home. It was the time where people started to drop out, turn on, drop out, and people started looking at their button-up lives and watching all the hippies on TV. And I was like, it's a very straight-A school teacher. I was teaching kindergarten in Pacoima, actually, but living in Woodland Hills. So it was attractive to come here and see this more freedom of lifestyle and just a more relaxed atmosphere. You didn't have to dress up to go out. Anyway, so it was very welcoming, and so we decided to rent a house because our friends were here. We were coming a lot, and never went back. So yeah.
Where were your places that you hung out when you were in Venice at that time?
Oh my goodness, Jurgen's for breakfast, or the Meatless Mess Hall. I preferred Jurgen's. You know where that is? Okay, on the corner of Windward and Pacific. It's kind of where the Egg Slut is now. That was Jurgen's. It was the coffee shop. It was Anna Haig ran it, and her husband was Jurgen. It was John Haig's ex-wife. And it was like the local place where you went for breakfast whenever you got up and walked over there. And there were a couple other places. Honky Hoky's Handy Hangout was the place at night for entertainment, which we can go into. But along the boardwalk, because I lived adjacent to the boardwalk and bought my house in 1973. My kids were little. It was before any vending. It was just a quiet place. The bikers, like the heavy-duty bikers, ruled it. So there was no hanky-panky because they were in charge. But the neighbors would promenade with their kids on the weekends. It was just the place to go out, see and be seen, and walk quietly with your children. And the drum circle was there. It was hippies were getting arrested by the cops. They were the only ones the cops bugged. They didn't mess with the bikers, but the hippies smoking pot got busted left and right. So it was a beautiful time. It was really a beautiful time. Honky Hoky's Handy Hangout was where the band Severance played. And Severance was a group of Venice guys, or Venice implants like we all were, expats, what do you call it? We all came from somewhere else. This was a group of guys who happened to be single parents, like I was a single parent by that time. And we took turns babysitting each other's kids. So we'd put the kids to bed and go dancing. They played Severance played 5 nights a week, and we danced. We'd go dancing for an hour or two, come back home. It was the best, most innocent, lovely time. Venice has always been different than other communities culturally, visually and culturally, actually. It just was a place where the motto or the way of being is just you can do whatever you want, but don't hurt anybody and don't get in anyone's face. That was it. And it wasn't buttoned up. You didn't have to dress up. You didn't have to put makeup on. You didn't have to wear a bra. You could just be. You walk out of the house and you could be however you felt like being that day, and nobody would judge you. That's what was freeing for me. It was just a non-judgmental way of living, and people just got along. Venice was different visually because it was old. It was before any of the new houses. There was a lot of cottages. In this neighborhood, it was all small cottages. And all of Venice was small cottage. It was very artsy because nobody wanted to be here. Until the late 60s, there were still oil wells. It was really considered a place that wasn't good to live for a variety of reasons. One is that it was not considered, up and coming. It had oil wells. It had these little cottages that you could buy for $10,000 anywhere east of Abercrombie. $10,000 was a steal. 15 were bigger houses, but it was considered unsafe, which I used to laugh at. We'd say, yeah, it's really unsafe, don't come. My parents were appalled that I would move here and after I got divorced especially, and buy a house without even consulting them, but I knew this was home. So I got involved in the Beachhead in probably 1973. I think it was after I just bought my house. My friend Pam Emerson, who has since sadly passed away, lived on Breeze. She was my first Venice friend. Our kids went to the same preschool. And she took me one day, I had just moved in, took me for a walk to meet John Haig, who is living on Breeze and Pacific. John Haig is a legendary Venice poet, political activist. He's one of the founders of the Peace and Freedom Party. And I wasn't involved politically in Venice, although I was a little bit in the Valley doing Valley Girl kinds of things. I would go to the Peace Center and, volunteer one day a week, and, the Women's Center. I would do things like that, but I was a young mom, and, I did what I could do as a volunteer. So I've always had that as my thing. Anyway, so Pam took me to meet John Haig, who sort of started introducing me to people, and then I got invited to a Beachhead meeting. And it just seemed like a fun thing to do, and it was. So I got involved in the Beachhead Collective. It was never a hierarchy, it was all volunteer, and we would accept suggestions, poetry, and articles from the community, and we got to vote them up or down, and it was a collective, so it was very interesting. And we put out a paper once a month, and we actually typeset it ourselves, cut up the typesetting, pasted it. We wound up moving to my living room to do it, and so I had carpets which were completely glued up, but we physically put together a paper every month, and I was the only one at that time with a car, so I had to go to the printer. I picked them up at the printer, and I did all the distribution, because I had a car and nobody else did. So it was a wonderful time. I did that for about 3 years, I think. And then Carol Fondiller, who's another Venice legendary person who's sadly passed on, who was a brilliant poet and writer and activist. And I said, you know what, we're tired. We need to find people to help do this. So we went to meet Arnold Springer, who was a professor who lived on Breeze as well. And we just convinced him to join our collective because we knew he could do a good job. He was at that time, he wore jackets with patches. He was very professorial. He started making wine in his basement, and it was before the Ulaanbaatar Foundation, which I hope you'll cover at some point. But he said, sure, and so he got involved, and then we quit, knowing that it would be in good hands and would continue. So that's what we did. So I think it was 3 years for me. Carol actually stayed on, because she wrote a lot for the beach. I think she stayed on the collective for a while, but I moved on. Anyway, but the development started happening. People started discovering Venice, and I have to say I'm one of them, because I came here, and people like me came here and could afford to buy a house. So, so that makes me one of the gentrifiers. But we got involved with fighting big developments. And the Coastal Commission had just come into formation, and so that gave us some power in terms of stopping things that were not, considered of the character of Venice. It was before the Venice specific plan, but we got involved with doing that as well. So Venice had more density was allowed, which actually was a good thing and would have been a better thing now than having to fight the Venice specific plan, which consequences of have not been good for keeping affordable housing in Venice. But at the time, you do what you think is right. But we were able to stop some really out of hand developments, like one on my block. I told you, I have a photo of it. We had in Venice, you knew your neighbors. I knew everyone on the block. We had a telephone tree. I had Big Frank. You should interview Frank. He still lives in Venice on Westminster. Frank and Linda Albertano. He was 6'6", big guy on the corner, lived on the corner of Wavecrest. And then I had Dave Sachs and Zeba, who were of the original Gold's Gym guys. In fact, Dave bought the first Gold Gym on Pacific, Gold's Gym for Gold, what's his name? His first name Gold. Anyway, Joe Gold. And Dave still lives there next door to me on Wavecrest. Wonderful guy, one of the original bodybuilders. Zabo passed away. So we knew everybody. It was very safe, and it was safe because you knew everybody. And if somebody had an issue, you called, and everyone ran out and dealt with it. So it was that's what made it safe. It was a community. It was a community where you knew every one of your neighbors, and your kids could play outside and they were watched. They could play on the boardwalk and they were watched, and it was safe. I forgot. Oh, so somebody bought 3 lots right across the street from me, and they proposed combining the 3 lots and building a row house with 5. It would be flat front, but it would have been 5 apartments or condos or whatever condos. Flat face, right? And so we said, wait a minute, we don't want to have that big, all wide building. And so the neighbors got together and we fought it, and we won at the Coastal Commission. And I have a photo on my gate, on my house, that says, Venice rules, condos suck. But we stopped them from building the 3 across, so they built 2, and then there's still an empty lot in the middle. The spirit of Venice still lives. There's enough of us, either OGs or new people who have that, love of the unusual or the funky and the whatever the affect is. There's enough of us, and what we found out, where I work these days with Venice Community Housing, we really have found out there are more of us than them. We just have to find each other. The fighters are loud and they're nasty, and it makes you think there's more of them, but there really aren't. I mean, in the battles that I've been part of just in the last few years, trying to build back a little bit of the low-income housing that was all over Venice, that was Venice in the 70s. It's just interesting, the people that are afraid of it and hate, and just without really reason, they think it will lower property values. Excuse me? Nothing has lowered property values in Venice. 1,000 people lying on the street hasn't lowered property values. How could a beautifully designed building lower property values? Excuse me. But that's just not valid. It's just fear. It's totally fear-based. But what we found really is that there are more people who still have the Venice spirit of share. We can be around other people who don't look like us. It's okay. We're not giving up anything by sharing a little bit of the turf with people who don't have money or resources.